I need, Daphne,
I don't.
I need freedom in my life.
Don't we all? Don't we all? Freedom from something, Cliff, or freedom to
I
something?
used to believe that life was all about getting freedom from the things that are holding me back.
Yes.
And the funny part about that is holding me back from what? I don't even know what I don't know, but I just want to get away from this thing that's holding me back. And I'll figure it out once I get away from this thing that I need freedom from.
My brother always says, like, "Who is this man that's holding you down?" Like, who is this? Like, myself, maybe myself. Yeah. So we are going to talk about exactly this concept today. I'm calling it getting off the bus because I had this crazy dream, and I know you and we both. I don't know. Maybe I'll say it this way: we value the power of dreams. Would that be a fair statement?
Yes, in fact, I have been studying something called dream therapy.
Yes. And what is this dream therapy?
Well, do we want to get into it in the opening of our show, or are we going to go? I'll tell you what, let's do this and then we'll be right back.
Welcome to Life, the ultimate choose your own adventure game with hosts Cliff Ravenscraft and Daphne Scott. Join this dynamic duo as they explore the profound concept of life as a thrilling adventure, blending ancient wisdom and modern psychology. Embrace the joy of living with presence, creativity, and playfulness. It's time to navigate the game of life together. Are you ready to play? Let the adventure begin.
All right, so this week, Daphne, what stood out to me is navigating whatever together. The word
That's what
together.
that's what stood out to me.
Wow.
It was exactly right. Like navigating life together. Yeah, that's
Yes,
it.
navigating life together. And I must say, it has been a joy navigating life together with you. I don't know how many people in our audience knows this, but we have been working together for more than a decade.
Isn't that crazy?
Yes.
I mean, you were and still are an integral person to my life transformation. So just, and I've loved working with you. I've loved having you as a coach. I love doing this podcast with you. Just anytime that we have an opportunity to collaborate together, it's thrilling for me. So
It
yeah.
is for me as well. Let's talk about this. Okay, so we left off in the intro. We were talking about dream therapy.
Yeah, I forgot we hadn't even played the intro yet.
Yeah, I know.
I'm
It's
so
like
excited.
I'm waiting for that hook to drop the intro, and it's like, what? Tell me more about this.
What is this dream therapy?
So you might be thinking Cliff's reading all sorts of great books on psychology
Yeah.
and dream therapy. No, I'm reading some weird esoteric, way out there stuff. I just finished reading a book called The Nature of Personal Reality by Jane Roberts,
Yeah, you
who,
mentioned this. I have not read it yet.
yes, it's a fascinating book. I like to be open to all sorts of different ways of thinking and perceiving about reality in the world. And this is one of those books that is called, it's under the genre of channeled works.
Okay.
And Jane Roberts channels an entity that goes by the name of Seth.
Okay.
And I'll tell you what, that's as much as I will say about it, other than the idea of the nature of personal reality. Seth communicates all sorts of ideas about how we actually perceive and create the world we live in. And
And is
that
it Seth like SETH?
Seth, yeah,
Oh, like
Seth.
Seth. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Huh.
And one of the chapters is something he calls dream therapy. There's a lot of things that we are experiencing that brings about healing both physically and to our psychology in our dream state. And he also
Okay.
recommended something that I've been testing out, which is I don't remember the technical name for it, but it is a split sleep schedule. So the idea is to sleep for 3 hours and then wake up and then stay up for a few hours, have that creative process, that creative flow, and then get your other 3 to 5 hours of sleep somewhere later in the day. And he talks about blending waking consciousness and dream consciousness, and how you can actually start experiencing what's called lucid dreams in your dream state.
Yes.
And you could have what's the most incredible experience of visualization and imagination in your waking state. And so there's this blending of this consciousness.
I love it. Well, this is what happened in the dream that I had about getting off the bus and then chasing the bus down.
So tell me a little. I was reading about your story in the rundown for the show. So tell me
Yeah.
about this dream.
And I'm going to keep it brief because I think hearing people's dreams sometimes, I mean, you and I like hearing about people's dreams, but sometimes listening to it, you're like, it's like watching someone's slideshow, I think, from their vacation. Anyway, so I have this dream. I'm on a bus. I'm with people that I know, and I realize that I need to go get something. And everyone is telling me, don't get off the bus. Don't get off the bus. Don't go do it. Don't go do it. I jump off the bus. I get whatever this thing is that I needed to get. And I see the bus pulling away. And then suddenly I'm chasing after the bus. And the bus starts going up this huge hill, like a hill that there is no way that I should have been able to beat this bus up the hill. But I do. And I arrive at this destination that in my dream, I'm fully aware that I was telling myself, oh, yeah, I really should be at this destination, right? They were right. I shouldn't have got off the bus. I really should be at this next place. So I chase the bus and I'm beating the bus up the hill, and I'm really proud. Like, I'm like, you guys, look at me. Like, I am beating this bus up the hill. And then I arrive at the destination. It's raining and my shoes are getting ruined. I'm like, why am I here? And also,
Did you get to the destination because you caught the bus and got back on the bus, or you ran
no,
the?
I beat the bus.
Okay, you beat the bus to the destination.
Yeah. And I'm so like, is anyone noticing that I've just beat this bus here? Like, all of you said you wanted me here, and now no one's even noticing that I beat this bus to the destination. And also now it's raining. And why did I tell myself this is like happening in my dream, right? And I'm like, and why did I tell myself I needed to be here? I don't need to be here. What I really needed to do is just get off this bus. And it sort of was this, it kind of was my, it was my like voice that I have, like this kind of like, of course, right? Of course you've told yourself this, and exactly what you thought was going to happen is exactly what happened, right? You really wanted to get off the bus. And yet for some reason you had this compulsion that you thought you needed to be somewhere. And it just, so, I wake up and I'm realizing that I have this dream. And then I'm going to tell you what AI said about it also.
Oh, okay. Oh, I love AI Carl Jung.
Well, what's so great is its first interpretation was essentially this very gray, dark interpretation about what it meant. Because I want to tell you, my impression of the dream was so positive. It was like, of course, like you are aware of, what can happen when you get led away from what you're desiring to go towards. And you're aware of, what I would call the naysayers, but the people who, are there, they're trying to protect you, right? To tell you, don't go do that thing. Right. And then you're aware of a pattern that you could have had of just thinking like, oh, yeah, I really should go do this, be at this meeting was, I think, a general sort of theme in the dream. But AI's interpretation, it was really that. It was like, oh, you've taken a leap that you shouldn't. These are my words. You've taken a leap that you shouldn't have. The bus is there to show you the way that you should go in your life. And so then I typed in, please give a more positive interpretation of this dream. It kind of did the opposite. It was like, oh, you should get off the bus. This is your running up the hill is your understanding of your own resilience and your own reliance and independence and, stick-to-itiveness in life. I took the second interpretation, which was my feeling about it when I had the dream. Nevertheless, it brought up this idea of getting off the bus. What is that? Am I going towards something? Right? Am I free to go towards something in my life? Or am I simply just looking at freedom from something? So I could have gotten off the bus thinking that I was becoming free from something. And there was that moment running up the hill where I was like, oh no, I have the freedom to go towards something. It's
Okay.
very different energies, right? And I was so proud of myself.
Proud of yourself for getting to where you wanted to go.
Yeah, for getting to where I wanted to go and beating the bus, which is like the bus for me, I think in my dream, this is the part I haven't analyzed too much. But the bus in the dream, I think me, beating the bus up the hill, the bus was sort of security, I think. It kind of was this known, like the fact that I ended up in the rain, the bus was sort of this known status quo. It was going to keep me safe. It was going to keep me from the rain. And yeah, it was just that security, I think, the safety. That's what it represented to me in my dream. So, yeah.
Very interesting.
Isn't it?
Well, I tell you, I love the actual theme when I read the title of the episode, Choose Freedom,
Yeah.
and the idea and the concept of the freedom from something versus the freedom to something.
Yeah.
And this is something that comes up all of the time in my coaching. As you know, Daphne, I coach a lot of people who are looking to make that transition from a lifetime in corporate or just in a standard day-to-day day job
Yeah.
at any level in the workforce. And a lot of people are like, if I could just get away from this,
Yeah. And
I need freedom from this. I need more freedom in my schedule. I need more freedom to all this stuff. But I need freedom from this first. And then I'll be able to have a clear vision of my future. And I'm like, that's not usually how this works out very well.
it's not. And I think this is so important. And I learned this when I was at UPenn going through the positive psychology program. I had never considered this before, this sort of thinking. The removal of a negative, and I'll just use emotion as an example, but any negative. The removal of a negative emotion does not guarantee the addition of a positive one.
Right.
And we make that sort of strange jump in our mind that if I just get rid of this, then I'll have that.
You know what just occurred? Just came to me. The reality is that the removal of a negative in the way that I think about things energetically,
Yeah.
there's already a negative and a positive in your life.
Yes.
And if your focus is on the negative and you remove the negative, in many cases, you're just going to attract another negative to go with the positive.
That's right. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the polls, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So the removal of a negative just means that there's a vacuum of that pole of the magnetic spectrum. And so the removal of a negative just without actually going after a positive, you actually need this. And so in many ways, when I make a decision, Daphne, and I'm choosing what I want to have freedom to do,
Mhm.
what I'm doing is I'm recognizing that, wow, there's a lot of positive with what I currently have.
Oh, this is so good.
And man, by stopping what I'm currently doing, I'm actually removing in my focus the positive of what I already have. And so therefore what I now attract into the thing, there's a vacuum of the positive side.
Yes. And I mean, I'm gonna jump way ahead. This is exactly it. I mean, to get to the next level in our life, and I did think about, the Next Level Mastermind, right? That was a program that I sat in with you, and when was that? Like
2017, 2018.
Yeah. And, really to get to that next level, to get to the freedom to experience, the freedom to be a certain way, the freedom to do the thing that we want to do, we must let go of the things that are working. I know that sounds crazy to get to that next level. And I think that's what I was doing on the bus, like getting off the bus. I was letting go of something that was safe, it was predictable, it was secure, and I was going out, right, to I don't know what it was that I was getting, but I was going outside of that security. I was letting go of that. And that's exactly it, Cliff. I mean, that is the next level sort of idea, which puts us in the state of the unknown. It can feel very uncomfortable in many ways, but that is that moving, that freedom too. I love how you just put this together.
Well, and one of the things that just occurs to me as I think about the scenario, thinking about somebody who is currently focused on all the negative that they need freedom from. And
Yeah.
and for me, I'm just going to continue with my metaphor of leaving a soul-sucking day job because I kind of had that experience a long time ago. All right. And so for me, what happened was it's like, man, I have this job. If I could just break free from it. However, what really helped me in my transition is to recognize like, okay, are there some negative sides of me staying where I am? Yes. What are those negatives? Well, the fact is that there's something I want to move towards that I desire, and this is keeping me from that. And so I
Yeah.
need the freedom to this. And then what I recognize is like, okay, well, gosh, I'm thinking now about freeing myself to go do that. By freeing myself to go do that, what I mean is I'm thinking about putting my 90-day notice in, right? And then when I realize that, it's like, oh, wait a second. Okay, while there's a lot of things I don't like about here, wow, what am I giving up that works? Number one, a decade-long experience of knowing that, man, this works. I'm a top insurance agent in multiple companies, one of the most successful agents in the United States. I have made great income. I got myself and my wife debt-free. We travel outside of the world, all expenses paid, twice a year minimum. This is all of this amazing stuff here is such a positive. Oh, by the way, a guaranteed
Yeah.
reliable income, steady week after week, and all the so and what happened was, wow, yes, I am definitely getting rid of some baggage that
Yeah.
comes along with the day job that I had. But what I recognize is that I'm actually focused on the great positive aspects of what my current scenario as in the day job has to offer. And I'm like, okay, I want to take the focus of what the best this has, and I want to make sure that what I'm going towards is equal to or greater on the positive side of things. And so it really is about the shift of and now that I think about this, I'm going to make sure that when I'm having these conversations with clients, it's like, okay, I get that you want to move away from your day job,
Yeah.
but can you please give me something that indicates that you have an understanding of all of the positives that your current situation has?
This is so important. I mean, so as you were talking about this, what changed in your job was you, probably. I'm not dismissing that, and I've worked, as you know, with clients. People have been one of those people that got into a toxic environment, that have, worked in an environment that wasn't healthy. I'm not dismissing any of that. More times than not, though, the experience that I watch people have is that over time they change. The job that they were doing or the role that they were in, just they did it, long enough, or
Yep.
they found something else. I think if I remember your story accurately, you found podcasting and you loved it. And so you're like, wow, what would it look like for me to build a life around this thing?
Yeah,
Right.
and by the way, just because I wanna set the stage for those who are listening,
Yeah.
it wasn't that I found podcasting, because I wanna give a fuller story. I
Okay.
I found hundreds of thousands of people who were eager to hear the things
Yes.
that I wanted to teach.
Oh, that's so good. Yeah. And
Whereas in my day job, I had about 10 to 15,000 people who were eager to have me fax them their proof of insurance cards.
just different, just different, right? So oftentimes in our life, hopefully, we change, right? Like, and
Yes.
so the things that we were doing, or the things that we, or the place that we were living, or the, whatever, wherever we find ourselves, we change. And that is the freedom too. And so what you're talking about, Cliff, of being able, I watch people do this a lot. They walk away from their jobs, or they walk away from their relationship with this essence of what I would call being stuck in fear, really, but being stuck around being right. Like, it's horrible. I have to get out of this. It's, everything is bad about this, this very black and white thinking. I think some of that psychology is what can give some of the motivation to move. It's like, I've suffered enough, and that's fair. Although I'm much more a fan of, what do I really want to go to? What's the vision for my life? And I've said this, I would rather be pulled by a vision
Yep.
than pushed by fear. And it just feels a little better to me, and I think that's the freedom too. I think when we're in the space of freedom from there's much more of a fear-based, consciousness that's driving our movement, and that can set us up, to your point, we're just right back in a negative sort of, or creating sort of that negative vacuum in our life. When we're moving towards something, I think it has a much more reliable part of bringing the positive into our
Yeah.
life.
The
Yeah.
way that I think about it is that if you are moving away from a relationship or a job situation or anything else that you're moving away from, if you're doing it because of fear, then you are typically in a cycle of focused thought that is based on fear.
Yes.
And what I recognize, even if you have an idea of what you want to move towards, if you actually are beginning to have a cycle of fear-based thought, that becomes a cycle that gets habituated. And so when you begin to move away from and then towards the thing you want, you are still moving towards the thing you want with the habitual thoughts of fear.
Yeah, you'll repeat the same patterns.
Yep.
And I want to, that fear can show up. One of the hallmarks that I would, in my experience, and that I would offer, is that the way that that you're really stuck is that you're super right. You're super right. Like, you're super right about how horrible it is, or how horrible this other person is, or how, bad it really is. And I think that's what you were saying, Cliff, is that, one of the things that you bring into the coaching, and you want to make sure, is like, look, tell me, I understand that you don't enjoy where you are right now. I hear that. And tell me, what are all the positives?
Yeah.
Because it can't simply all be bad, right? That is that sort of, we're painting this sort of narrative. So yeah, I just want to put that out there, because if you're listening and you're wondering, like, I'm not stuck in fear, I just want to get the hell out of this office, it stinks.
I'll share a personal experience of this. So, my biological dad, who passed away in May of 2015, from the time I was born until the day he died, he had an experience where he was addicted to drugs and alcohol and had lots of significant issues. Most of my young adult and then adult life until he died was basically thinking of all the things I didn't like and the many ways that I wanted to be away from him, and
Yeah.
also how I wanted my parenting to be away from him. And it was
Mhm.
all focused on what I didn't want, what I didn't want, what I didn't want.
Uh-oh.
Now, it was exactly. So, what I discovered, though, through this journey is there's been a lot of healing in my relationship with my dad since he's passed, and I even have talked about a metaphysical experience I had with him in a dream on my birthday one year.
That's right.
So, the thing is, though, is I what I've come to is like, okay, yes, there are plenty of things that I choose to stay away of and avoid as a father. I don't drink, and I'm not out there doing these drugs, and I'm very cautious of the obsessive compulsive side of the things that I'm interested in.
Mhm.
However, what I love is through some healing, I've been able to go back and reevaluate my dad as a dad and saw so many incredible things that he did. In
Yeah.
spite of all of the things he was struggling with throughout his life, the number of times that he went out of his way to make things happen for me, and the way it's like, oh, I also okay, yes, I want to bring what I've learned about what to avoid, but I want to bring so much of what was great about my dad
Yeah.
into my parenting as well.
Yeah. That's beautiful. And I think there's just, it's so much more nuance to people and life than sometimes we can give when we get stuck, right? And wanting to be right. And I think I loved what you said about healing too, because I imagine, and having my own experience with a lot of these things, like, there can be a lot of hurt. There can be disappointment. There can be all of these things. And it is important that we go through our healing process, and whatever that looks like for each person. Please get a therapist, work with people if you need to go, however you want to do it. And so that you can appreciate nuance. I think what happens when we're stuck in the trauma, we're stuck in the hurt, we're stuck in sort of all of these less than positive sort of parts of our experience, it is really hard to appreciate those nuances. because you just have to untangle all of that. And it does not mean, by the way, I want to be really clear, it does not mean that you go back into a relationship with that person. It does not mean that you have to keep talking to that person, but there can be that healing that can happen that can be really life-giving. And you
Yeah.
can have much more appreciation for the things in your case that your father brought to you and taught you that were positive, that were of value to you in your life. And you also learned, how about this? Some of our greatest teachers also teach us what not to do.
Well, that's exactly it.
Right.
There's a lot of positive in who I am today as a result of the things that I learned that I would not have known so many things that I don't want to have as an experience
Yeah.
of my life if my dad had not demonstrated a smorgasbord of options for me to choose from.
Exactly. Like, thank you. Now I can see what not to do
And
and also what to do,
and
right?
by the way, I'm quite aware that I have given my children a smorgasbord of options of things that they don't want to have in their life.
I know I say this to everyone, no one gets out alive. Don't you love it though? Have you had those moments where you sound like one of your parents? Don't you just love it when that happens? And I'm like, I
Yeah.
sound just like my mom. It's inevitable. Can't help it.
That is fun.
That is fun. Okay, so yeah, so freedom from, looking at our consciousness. What are we moving towards? And I think this other part of my dream that I realized when I ran up the hill and I beat the bus. Here's the other thing that came to me, and this was in my dream. Oh, there's no way that I should have been able to beat that bus up this hill. Like, physically, that should be impossible. And in my dream, there was this moment of, oh, wait, the rules I made up might not apply. And it was that moment of me and this is more the freedom too, like all the stories I made up about work is hard. You have to
Mhm.
work hard, right? This is going to be difficult. This is going to be scary for me to go out on my own. And so there was this moment in my dream of just recognizing where were the rules, and we've talked about this on several podcasts, but where were the rules that I made up that said X, Y, and Z are not possible. And I think that's when I got to the top of the hill. I was like, did anybody notice this? Not because it was about me, because I'm like, you guys, maybe the rules, maybe they aren't what they think they are, right? Maybe they're different.
That is what you just said is a perfect tie-in to what this whole book about the nature of personal reality is that in essence, and I get this is not accepted by most norm, everything. And I do want to stress once again, this book is weird and way out there and is probably not for 99.999% of our audience.
I love
It's
that you read. Oh, I love that you just stay open to like, I'm just going to read this. Let's see.
But the premise of the book is whatever you believe will be your reality.
I don't know how that's not true.
Well, where I think a lot of people will stumble is the book very clearly states things like this. If you believe in Western medicine and you have a physical ailment, then
Mhm.
you will require the assistance and medical aid of Western medicine. Whereas if you had a belief that you could think and through your thought create a vibration that would bring about healing within your cells without the aid of Western medicine, then therefore, if that belief was actually strong and congruent with you and you didn't have any thought to oppose it, then you would heal thyself. Now that is where that's what I'm bringing out is that this book I make no claims about its accuracy and whether or not you should go and try to escape the confines of Western medicine.
That's interesting. Well, I won't go off on that tangent. I could.
Oh, I know we could. I know.
Maybe later. Okay, well, that's really good. So, yeah, the rules may not apply, right? And so I want to get into this next part then. So, I beat the bus up the hill. Great. Rules might not apply. Great. And then we talked about letting go of that old stuff. And this is, I think, where we were talking too about what are the positives, but also, Cliff, I think the identity shift that we go through when we're letting go, especially when we're letting go of something that was, sort of working. And we're letting go of doing things a certain way. And I watch this with business owners too, who have gotten to a certain level of success. And you know this phrase, probably anybody that's been in business for long enough knows this phrase. What got you here won't get you there.
Yes. And do you know I have a version of this? It's a Cliff Ravenscraft original. You ready?
I'm ready.
What got you to where you are will keep you where you are.
Yes, exactly. What got you there will keep you there. And so, there's this sort of untangling or in the spirit of freedom to go towards something, whatever it is you want to experience in your life. There is this moment of sort of untangling. I think it does feel sometimes like an entanglement, but untangling, letting go of these ways of doing things and being willing to let go. Like, man, I was successful up to this point. Why in the world would I go letting go of all these things that got me where I am? Well, what got you here won't get you to that next level in life. It really will not allow you to move towards
Well,
the
and
next level of freedom.
it also depends on how you define success. And I don't know about you, Daphne, but what success means for me
Oh, yeah.
changes all the
Yes.
time.
Yes, it does. I would imagine, even for me, I don't know if this is true for you either, but even almost week by week or month by month, it can change for me.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like I've noticed like, oh, success this last few weeks, I'm in my house in Michigan. It's a very different time for me when I'm here. And I was like, wow, success over this next couple of weeks really looks like for me dialing down just a minute, ratcheting down. I'm finishing this drum certification course I'm going through. It looks like me really ratcheting it down into my energy level at the same time that I notice my attention is there's a lot more I want to learn around technologies right now for my business and that we've talked about. So there's a lot more I want to put attention on that right now. So that's going to kind of pull back just a little bit on some other things to be able to move into that over this next few weeks. And that's what success looks like. It's a very, making sure I'm rested, well exercised, my health is great, getting that really dialed in. And you and I have talked about, the new schedule that I want to put based on inspired by you, of course, that I want to put in place. And, that looks like success over the next, that would be success for me over the next 2 months. I don't know what it's going to look like after that. Yeah.
There's a metaphor that I teach in some of my workshops, especially the building an online business workshop that I do. So I give this metaphor of this group of people, this village that lives on an island. Okay. And I want you to imagine like the mountains behind the island is mountainous. And I mean, the terrain is intense, but the beach area is plush. It's wonderful. Life is great here. Most people don't go venturing off into the mountainous, dangerous
This is
parts
so funny.
of the island behind. But I want you to imagine that it's like you can't see much beyond this side of the mountainous thing. You can't see much over to the left, and so you're pretty much have this, let's just say, a piece of the pie that's maybe 25%, and you can see what's out in the ocean in front of you. And off in the distance is an island. And you see ships coming in and out, way more than your tiny little island. And you've grown up here and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm bored living on this island. And I see that island out there, and there's lots more activity. Every now and then, somebody that's been to that island comes here and tells me about that island, and that island sounds amazing. So I save up, I start building, and now I have my own boat, and I am now going to set sail towards that island that I've been looking at for the last 12 years of my life, thinking that's the island, that's my destination, that's where I'm going to go. Now, the thing is I set sail. It's been 12 years. I'm now moving toward that island. I've told everybody for the last 12 years that my destination is I'm going to that island that we all see. But as soon as I get out beyond the confines of what I was able to see before, I'm now starting to see the island disappear behind me, and I'm starting to see that there were other islands where that I was not able to see their view. And over there are lights emanating from it, and there's all sorts of other things, and it's like, and here I am, and I'm like, oh man, I'm just maybe 2 hours away from reaching the island that I've been thinking of for the last 12 years. But it means nothing to me now because now I see even better stuff on the horizon. I just never could see it before. But
Yeah.
here's what I'd like to say. Am I unsuccessful because I never chose to actually reach the destination for which I've been planning to reach for the last 12 years? No, it's
No.
just that I got almost there, and had I never went towards this island that I've been pointing my thoughts towards for the last 12 years, I would have never seen what I ultimately wanted more. And
Yeah.
that's the and for me, that's what life is about. It's like, wow, there's this next island, there's this next island, there's this next thing that I want. And it's like, for me, success is it's a moving target.
Yeah, and you just said a really key word. You said what I want.
Yes.
So let me rewind your scenario because I want to tell you where my mind went. My mind went, oh, I'm bored here. I need to get off this stupid island. And I need it. Everyone keeps telling me I need to go over to this other place. It's so much better over there. This is me going to this wherever it was that I ran up the hill and it was raining and my shoes are just getting ruined. I have to go to this meeting. I have to get off this island. I have to get to this next place. And I think that's the consciousness of sort of the have to, the need, the have to get over there, have to get away from this, have to go there versus, you know, I think I'd like to go see what this other island's all about. I
Yeah.
want to have this next experience. And then you get going and you're like, you know what? I actually want to go over here now. And how many times, I don't know if this is true for you, but have you had the experience of when you express what you want to experience or what you want to do, having to explain it to someone?
I have never had the experience where I have to explain it, but I felt compelled to for some reason.
Yeah. Well, we're let me say it another way. Where people want to know why.
For me, that's what I'm saying. That's not been my experience, mostly
Mhm.
because I think that I'm not in a group of people where their approval means a whole lot to me. So it's like,
Oh, how blessed you are.
I know it is a pretty blessed life, let me tell you. However,
All
there
right,
are some times when I feel like, and when I'm, by the way, what I'm actually doing when I'm, because I have lots of places where I go and tell people about it's like, here's a new dream I have, here's something that I'm going to go do.
yeah.
And oftentimes I find myself compelled to give reasons to others
Yes.
for why I want this, when in essence, I don't need to publish any of that because I've just
No.
needed to actually convince myself why it's okay for me to want this.
Which I just want to point out, psychologists have demonstrated multiple times that we just make it up after the fact. We really don't know. We're not really clear why we do anything. So if you just let go of that, you'll be better off. The truth is you just want to, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. And when we're in that space of the need, I think this is what I've really experienced. When I am in the space of need, I definitely am living from and I think this fits into the freedom from versus freedom to. I am definitely an experience of feeling as though I'm lacking something. Like I need to get, I'll keep with your metaphor because I love it. I need to get off this island. I need to go to this meeting because if I don't go, I'll shift in my own experience. If I don't go to this meeting, then I will be judged, criticized. I'll lose the approval of the people that are there. Right. So there's this sort of scarcity mindset, this
Ah,
scarcity consciousness that comes along versus I want to go to this meeting. I enjoy being in this space. I enjoy learning. I'm curious what's going to happen, so on and so forth. So there's just this scarcity that comes along with the need. There's something lacking.
yeah.
Yeah.
I do know how I can resonate with the scarcity mindset on wanting something new and being concerned about what do other people think about it. And that
Hmm.
is for myself as a solopreneur, entrepreneur with a handful of clients, like what will my clients think that this means that I'm going in this direction, if you will.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, let me give you an example of my life. So I had this thought. I actually wrote this in a note. I wonder what it would look like if I worked with exactly the people I want to work with and made all the money I desire, had all the freedom that I wanted, and spent each day writing, playing music, and spending as much time with my family and friends as I desire.
That would be awesome.
Wouldn't it? And so I said, okay. So my story is just, my working life has just been so blessed and so wonderful. And I had a corporate gig that I was in until, last year, probably. Prior to that, I had my own business for about 6 years. And then prior to that was in another corporate gig. So when I left my first corporate world, I had still about my first corporate job. I was part of the company and I still had about $1.5 million worth of investment. I was willing to walk away from all of it because I was no longer called to be there. And I did. Got very fortunate that was allowed to stay as it was, and did very well. And then in this last role that I was in, very similar situation in that I was a partner in the company. And I knew that as I walked away, that probably a year to a year and a half later, there would be another transaction and it could potentially be worth a couple million more dollars. And I still walked away from it. And what was more interesting to me was not the I need to stay because of X. In the business world, they call these golden handcuffs, by the way.
Oh yeah.
Right? I just wasn't interested in that. What I was more interested in is I wonder what it would look like if I did this and this and still had all the monetary resources I desired. I wonder what that would look like. And every single moment of that has come true. There's been no lack. There has been no scarcity. Now I don't want to be too, high-minded around this, but it is simply just a matter of, I knew that I had to let go of the old way that I was doing things, of an old mindset. I knew that I had to be willing to get off the bus so that I could experience this next level of my life. And so far, so good, I would say.
Yes. I love it.
Yeah. Yeah. It was
I think
was
I think there are a couple of things is asking yourself that question, what do I want? Not
Yeah.
what do I want to get away from, but what do I want to move towards?
Yeah, what do I really want?
And
What do
not
I really want?
what do I think other people would be pleased with me wanting?
Yes. Okay, thank you for bringing that back because this was the part of the story. So I was told by so many people, "What are you doing?" Right? My financial advisor's like, "Look, what are you doing?" I have a Porsche collection. This is 2 more Porsches. I'm like, "I already have enough cars." Like, right? Like, this is worth this. This is worth this. And I'm like, I potentially, by the way, wasn't a given. And I said, I can appreciate all that. And also, it's such a mindset of that I would be potentially lacking something, that I need to be in this environment, that I need to sacrifice my well-being, that I need to sacrifice what I really want to be doing and experiencing in my life now. I'm being called to experience these things. It really wasn't even a question, to be honest. And so how do I go into that next level? And so there were a lot of voices that were sort of chirping the people on the bus, really.
Yeah.
And I noticed that I had that experience of just really not needing to explain myself very much, if at all. I don't know that I've really explained much
Yeah.
at that point.
And the key is if you know what you want,
Yes.
that's for me the whole gist of this thing. If you want the freedom from anything, that's not the place to start, although it could be a catalyst.
It's a catalyst, yeah. I mean, we can come to our change through suffering.
Yes.
It happens. And I think there also can be the mindset shift that I can recognize I'm telling myself I'm suffering. What are the stories I've told myself about this? How am I creating? I mean, suffering is optional.
Yes.
So how am I creating the suffering for myself? And I can shift out of that and go, look, what can I appreciate about all of this? All of this has been wonderful. I don't know about you, Cliff. I was thinking about leaving. I was thinking about transitions just as I was talking. And I think that for myself, when I get trapped in a pattern of not wanting to feel the sadness that comes along with letting go of something, I notice that's where I create the suffering for myself. When I'm like, oh, it's like there's a book written about it, like it's like a bittersweet moment. Like, this was so great. And there were so many parts of this that were so wonderful. And it's time for me to go now. And those moments of sort of letting go, saying goodbye, however we characterize it. And I noticed when I used to resist that experience of letting go, that's when the suffering came.
Yeah.
When I would experience that moment of like, oh man, this was so great. And
Yep.
and I do have a little sadness about it. I'm also very excited about moving to the next thing. And I wouldn't want to feel that emotion, then I would create more of the suffering and I'd have to get my hate on and I'd have to make it really miserable for myself so that I would force myself to move out of it. It was easier to feel that suffering, I guess, than and to be right about how horrible it was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the thing is sometimes you do need to experience that sad. There's a grieving process of letting go
Yeah,
of any part of our identity.
absolutely. Yes, there absolutely is. And at least in my experience, that has been true.
Yeah,
Yes.
I don't know anybody who has lost a part of their identity that doesn't grieve that loss because it literally makes us a part of who we are.
Yeah.
I think this is what happens, like, if you all of a sudden have a friend that you've had as since childhood and that friend passes away. What is
Yeah.
that grieving part? Well, that grieving part, eh, I I a part of it is what you've lost in your identity.
Yes.
You know,
Yes.
it's like,
Because
wow, because it's this is so much of who I am is my ability to be in conversation and in communion and in relationship and to talk with and to have fun with and to go do things with this friend. And that part of me has transitioned and transformed in some way that won't be the same. And that's what this grieving part is. I was listening to a teaching this morning and and it's like, could you imagine this? Somebody calls you randomly on the phone, complete stranger. You've never heard from them ever before. And they go, "Hey, Daphne Scott, I just want to let you know my name is so and so, and I found your phone number. And I just want to let you know this is the last time I've ever called you. We will never speak again." And they hang up. How upset would you be?
probably not very.
Exactly.
I'd be like, okay, thank you. As a matter of fact, I think I have that experience with telemarketers. I'm like, you'll never call. We're never speaking again.
Oh, that I think they would actually say, "I want to call you every day, 18 times a day." But
It's true.
the whole idea is that that person has not made it into a part of your identity.
Yeah. Yeah.
You haven't entered in that once that relationship is there, you talk about in your book the things that how we relate to things. And when I say relationships, it's not just with people. We have
No.
relationships with work. We have relationships with job titles. We
Yes.
have relationships with vehicles. I mean, we have relationship with all sorts of things.
Yes. Everything. Our equipment. Yeah. I
Yes.
mean, I mean, that is the essence of the book. It is about, how do you relate to this? How do you relate to the idea of money? Right? To concept. How do you or construct it? How do you relate to time? I mean, we've talked about that, right? How do you relate to these things? It's pretty critical, I think, for us to reflect on those types of relationships and what we tell ourselves and the stories that we make up and the rules that we make up and what that looks like. I mean, for me, that's the richness of being a human.
Yeah.
Yeah. So freedom from freedom to. Right? What are you asking yourself? And I think letting go of all these things that really are no longer of service to you in the spirit of appreciating them. What are you going towards? And it's pretty radical. And when we have what I know when I had this experience of like, okay, time for me to move on, that though it's those big steps that kind of I guess in my experience, it's like the big decisions take care of themselves. Have you noticed?
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
saying, but yeah, right. Like there's not much other choice. Right. And I noticed when I'm toiling, I was talking to you about microphones. When I'm toiling between this microphone, this one, the truth is after the top 3 or 4, it probably doesn't really matter that much. Right. Like, and it's probably not a huge, huge, huge decision on some level. The big stuff of life, you really only have 1 or 2 choices and they take care of themselves. And that's why I think setting the really big goals for ourselves, really getting to that, what do I want to move towards? That drives everything.
And
That will make you make the choices, so to
yeah.
speak. Yeah.
And I will tell you, Daphne, I run into a lot of people when I say, "So what is it that you want to move towards?"
Yeah.
And the number of people who say, Cliff, I have no idea. And in many cases,
Yeah.
it's not that they don't have any idea. It's that they shut out every single idea that they didn't know how to make it happen.
Oh, that's so good. Yeah, they think they have to know the how.
Yep.
Oh, so
And
good.
so what I want to point out is I want everyone who has put off creating in their mind, what do you want to create next? Ignore the question, how am I going to do it?
Please
It's
ignore that
it
question.
Ignore it
Cannot
altogether
say
and
that
just
anymore.
imagine if I already had it, how would I feel? And what would life be like if this were my experience? Just assuming that it would, however it happens, it will happen, but just take the how out.
Totally.
And then the next thing the only other hurdle you need to get over is, do I believe it's possible? Again, forgetting the how.
Yeah.
The how
That's
is not
so
important.
great. Oh, it's
And
not. It is detrimental to start getting yourself into the how conversation because the commitment is what drives the action.
yeah, I have coaching conversation. I say, "What about this? Have you ever thought about doing this?" "Yeah, I think about that all the time, but I just can't see how to do it." Well, that's not the question. Do you want it? I don't know because I just can't see how I would do it.
Yeah.
And I'm
Yeah,
like,
it's so good.
let's just assume you could snap your fingers and it's yours. Would you want it?
Yeah.
I
Would you wanna
haven't
do it?
yeah, it's
That's so
important.
good.
And
It
then
is important.
do you believe it's possible? And then the 3rd step, by the way, is make the decision that you will have it.
Yes.
It's
I love
usually only after that that the house starts to show up.
I have my dear, dear friend Diana used to say to me so many years ago, there's a universe waitress. So think about a waitress at a restaurant, right? Or server, whatever. So you go to the restaurant, you put in your order. Do you ever think to yourself, you put in your order, do you ever think they're never going to bring it?
No. It's
Never.
every time they're gonna bring it.
Every time they're going to bring it. And she would say to me, she's like, look, the universe works the same way. It's a universe waitress. You put in your order. Right? You're speaking your commitment into the world. This is what I really want to experience. This is what, yeah, I wonder what it would look like for me to experience this now in my life.
Yep.
And you put in your order. Why would you think that the universe waitress would suddenly just stop bringing you your order?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That stuck with me for the last,
I
I don't
love
know,
that.
20 years.
That is a great metaphor for the law of attraction. I love it.
I agree. I thank you. Well, and so this is perfect because I know that you are working on your, I don't know if I say the next level. I don't know, get off the bus. I don't know, getting off the bus, but
Oh,
I wanted to talk about because
I'm
we're gonna make a
my next
transition.
I'm working on my next
Yeah,
destinations.
your next destination, where you're headed to next, your freedom to the next level. And I think this is a perfect time to segue, if you agree, segue into really what we're doing with the show.
Yep.
When we started this show, we had said to each other, look, we'll see how many episodes we want to do, and maybe it'll end up in seasons, or we just didn't know. I mean, we really did not know. And now you're branching into your next level of freedom too. I'm branching into mine. And so we are going to next week create our last show for the season. We will
For the
be
season.
for the season, not our last show ever, as far as we can tell. We're currently committed to doing another season. And we're going to bring this season to a close next week. And so I know we wanted to talk a little bit about that too, in the spirit of freedom too, and moving to our next thing, and say a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so when we first started the show, I had recommended, "Hey, let's consider doing this in seasons," and the idea would be,
Which I
let's do,
love.
10 or so episodes, and then we'll take a pause for a while and come back.
Yeah.
But we actually got to 10 episodes, and we loved what we were doing, and the flow was happening. It's like, "Oh, this is amazing."
Yeah.
Then recently, over the last several months, I have been thinking, it's like, "Oh, I have all sorts of what would life be like if?" And I have a habit of asking that question a lot and building up a lot of things that I would love to create. And
Also
then I'm like
guilty.
and then what I decided is like, "Huh, what," and by the way, one of the things, I'll just be transparent. One of the things was, what I love what I'm doing with Daphne is it's introduced me to Daphne's whole community. What if I were to create a short series of episodes, like a 5-episode podcast that will never have more than 5 episodes?
Yeah.
with a number of other people in my network. And I would just we would co-host and co-create a podcast together. And it's like, okay, I would love to pursue that, but I would need to actually free up some time. It's like, so I wonder if Daphne would be open to going back to the idea of seasons. And so that's what we're doing.
Yep.
And I'm hoping to go and move towards the creation of some other co-created podcast shows on other topics with other friends of mine. However, the one thing is exclusive to this podcast. I'm coming back for at least one additional season, and probably many additional seasons with Daphne. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's what we're
Yeah.
gonna do. We'll take the summer off. We're gonna come back in the fall.
Yeah, we'll be back in the fall. And you know what I love so when you came, first when we suggested this early on, I had a lot of energy around it. I thought that sounds really good. I love the idea of seasons. I love the idea of arcing sort of the story. So what we're going to do next week
Mm.
is we are going to do a summary of this last 25 episodes, which I am so excited to create. And just be like, what is the point? Like, what did we talk about in this first season of the show? You know? And what were the takeaways? And what were the parts that, I'm curious to see what I took away, even
Mhm.
as we're doing this thing. So it's sort of one thing when you sort of are doing the podcast is sort of positioning yourself in kind of this expert role. And then you sort of like, oh, I actually learned a ton going through that process, and sharing the things that we shared with each other. So I'm really excited to see that even for myself, but that's what we're going to do in next week's episode. And then we'll take this pause and then we'll come back in the fall.
Yep.
Season 2. Like, we don't know
Season
what
2.
season 2 will be about. We
Yep.
don't know.
And it'll be right around the third or week of August or something like that. We'll be back. So
Yes.
definitely coming back for a second season. And call to action for this episode, though.
Yeah, and thanks that you brought up my book. I really do want to talk about my book. So, Waking Up a Leader, The 5 Relationships of Success. You can find it on Amazon. You can also find it on my website at daphne-scott.com. There are book resources there for you. All you need to do is put in your email address, and then you will get all the book resources. There are, for every chapter in the book, there are exercises, there are meditations that I have done that you can have access to that just reinforces the learning in the book. The first half of the book is all about mindfulness and what we would probably think of as mindfulness practices, but it's quite a bit of things that we've talked about on this show, to be honest with you. There's a whole section in there about your story. Is your story true or not? We did a lot of the Byron Katie work that is in there. And then the second part of the book is really looking at these relationships that we have with money, time, our friendships, ourself, and the relationship that we have with the unknown. So it is a book that is absolutely there to inspire your transformation, especially people who are leaders in organizations, but leaders in their life too. If you're a leader, we're all leading our lives, but to inspire that and to support you on your transformation. So, Waking Up a Leader, 5 Relationships of Success. So get the book.
Wonderful. And link to that will be in the show notes.
Yes, we link
Awesome.
to everything in our notes.
All right. And then my call to action is going to be my main podcast, which is the Cliff Ravenscraft Show.
Yes.
You can find that, by the way, at thecliffravenscraftshow.com or link in the show notes, obviously. But I want to tell you real quickly about just some of the most recent episodes. So, for example, episode number 733 is titled "Let's Put an End to the Myth of Overnight Success." And what I talk about in this episode is a disturbing trend. I've seen it for years, but it's been increasing the number of people who are being encouraged to leave their day jobs and with risking everything without a clear plan for how they're going to reach profitability. And now they're stuck in a mindset of scarcity and fear and anxiety and worry, and families are going almost without food on the table for months. It is terrible, and I just want to help put this end to this idea that you can just leave your day job and in 6 months you're going to have a 7-figure business, which is what a lot of people believe.
Yes.
That's episode 733. Episode 732 is From Shiny Objects to Steady Progress, leveraging what you already know. I definitely am interested in learning the latest technology, the newest tools, the newest frameworks to help me achieve my goals. Oftentimes, though, is that I go deep into the exploration of those without fully implementing what I invested in learning the last time.
Yeah.
And if I'm truly honest, there are things that I've learned and implemented in the past and I even perfected, and they're guaranteed to produce results over and over and over again. And somehow I don't even know how it wasn't conscious. I just got out of the habit of doing it and I forgot about them. And if
Yeah.
I
Isn't that
just went and
interesting?
turned that back on, I would it's like, this would be amazing. So that's episode 732. And then episode 731, the top 3 online business mistakes I've made over the past 4 years.
The show's so good. So I listened to that one. I haven't listened to the other 2. And then you did one about, for those of you who are podcasting, want to know audio about the audio visual part of podcasting. You just did that show too, which I haven't listened
Yeah,
to.
that was episode 734. Is it worth having a video version of your audio podcast?
Yeah, I really I cannot wait to listen to the one about overnight success. It's funny, I just it's not published yet. I just finished editing it about surfing. And I wrote this article about surfing, and it was really kind of a cheesy article because I was just using all these metaphors. It wasn't intentional. But one of them was like everything looks easy from the shore. Right? I get
Yeah.
out there and I almost drown, okay? And I think I'm just so inspired to listen to that episode too, because and I think especially in the early days of the internet and online business, it definitely was positioned like, hey, just take this on and set up these funnels and you'll make millions of dollars. Which was just, no one told you, like, it's going to take 25 other people helping you to pull all this off. And you're going to become a production company because you're trying to satisfy all these different channels and sources and, digital marketing and all these other things. So I cannot wait to listen to that episode.
Yeah, I love
Yeah.
it. There's this guy, I was listening to his podcast and he was interviewing somebody else. And the friend of mine says, "Hey, do you know Cliff Ravenscraft?" And the other guy says, "I've heard that name." He says, "Yeah, well, Cliff Ravenscraft, anyway, he's a great guy. Here's the deal. One of the things I love about him is he decided that he was tired of doing podcast consulting and technical stuff. So he decided to go pursue Mindset Answer Man, and he did it. And within 90 days, he replaced all his income." And I'm like,
Uh-oh.
no. Yeah, I mean, technically, yes. In 90 days, did I shut down this? And did I have the same amount of income from the new thing that I was doing 90 days later? The answer is yes. But I built that. It was 2.5 years figuring out the right things to be able to turn off the other thing. I
And
didn't do that in 90 days. Come on.
just do it overnight.
Just Seth Godin once said about his book, and it's in his audio clip is in there. Yes, I'm an overnight success with this book, and it only took me 20 years to do it.
Do you know what I love? I'm glad you did this. I love going back, like somebody who has a really successful YouTube channel, like the gamers, or there's one guy that does a lot of podcast or does a lot of microphone reviews who I love. I love going back and watching their first videos. They are so great because they're typically just in this, sort of just not a fancy studio at all. Not
Yep.
fancy camera. Their cameras are not that great. It's just it's such a great reminder. And then you see them 5, 7, 8 years later. And then, that's what you're watching today, right? It took them
Oh,
that
yeah.
long, in some cases 10 to 12, 15 years to get to that level of what it looks like now. And I think it's such a great, it's all on video for you. You can see it in real life,
Exactly.
there for posterity for sure. So yeah, I can't wait to listen to that episode. So good. All right. Well, I guess we're going to choose our own adventure.
Until next time, that's exactly what we encourage you to do. Thank you, everybody. We'll see you next week for our season 1 finale.